everyone. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces. We've been working on Adobe for a while, and it's always good to get together and share. So, Brad and the Myth, I want to thank you for helping coordinate this and, not letting me off the hook either. You're like, you're gonna present. And so even though I'm not even based here, I'm actually based in outside Portland, Oregon. But Clark is my local guy here and has helped coordinate all of this so we could host it. Because it's such a great active community. So just a little bit about myself. I have been an individual contributor for many years working on AEM, but then previous content management systems before that at Intel, and I joke for my entire adult life I've worked at Intel. But recently just became a manager of a small team of senior developers. All of them are here today. And that's just in the last couple months, and it's awesome to be able to work with them and then have events like this. So we've also got Arun Sagiraju here. He is our platform architect, and I've worked with him on our platform since the beginning. Actually, we were on the same team that was picking. We're trying to decide when we were going to re-platform. We also have Shawn, Raghu, and Mike, who are our senior application developers, who have been working with us for many years. And so we've got this is the heavy hitters of Intel working on Intel.com. So today, Arun's going to give a little kind of overview of our platform, kind of the scale that we're at, and some of the pieces of the Adobe marketing stack that we're using. Then Mike is going to go into some really kind of fun and kind of we call it a side project, but it's really a lot more than that, with just an enterprise end that we've been using internally, also on Adobe. Then Shawn's going to give a demo on an external app integration. And then Raghu's going to wrap it up with some where we've been going with our 6.3 upgrade to Touch UI, and then also some of the features that we want to take advantage of in 6.3. So with that, let me give it over to Arun to talk about the overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Hopefully you had a good drive here. We didn't spend a lot of time in traffic. And also it's good to see a lot of familiar faces, both inside Intel and some of the folks I have not seen their faces maybe in a decade or maybe 10 years. Good to see, and finally I can connect voice with their faces and names. I have not seen. I used to have a lot of phone calls with some of you folks. Again, thank you again for coming here. I won't spend a lot of time because the meet is coming later. So this is, I just want to give a brief summary of where are we from a platform point of view, right? We have about 500,000 pages across 29 locales. We used to have about 54 locales. We kind of shrunk it down a little bit to 29 locales. We have about like 250,000 assets. We have authors all over the world. Approximately about 600 authors publishing 24/7, and our repository approximately it is at 1.3 terabytes. It's growing at maybe 15 to 20% every year for the last 3-4 years. We get about 25 million unique visitors per month, and when we started the AEM journey in around 2011 on 5.4 version, and then we went to 5.6.1, then 6.1, and we also have one more instance which we'll talk later, which is running on 6.2. I know some of you have helped us build some of the legacy systems. The good news is it's all gone. It's all gone. You might have worked a lot of these experiences in the past. We used to have like 4 CMS systems, and we were able to consolidate all that into one AEM infrastructure. Now we are all happy AEM community. That's why we are here. Thank you. So this is our digital experience platform, and the core central piece of this platform is AEM. we run AEM on-prem on a virtual infrastructure. The publishers run on virtual and the author runs on a physical environment. So, as I said, we use the sites and the assets primarily on the AEM side. Ours is a highly structured authoring model where there are very strict guidelines and policies, a lot of templates and components. As I said, like 29 locales, a lot of content is created in US English. Then we use MSN to basically publish to these 29 locales, translate it through an external vendor, and we publish it to a pool of publishers. Basically, these pool of publishers have a lot of experience running it. We started with, okay, let's bring marketing into this stack, but right now we have pretty much majority of external facing intel, marketing, sales, software experience, software developers, hardware developers, including some of the B2B experiences, partner experiences. Everything is primarily off of AEM. It's become a major hub as a gateway into especially not only just the content experiences. We also have something like My Intel. It is one place where all the Intel identities or registered users come and manage their profile, look at their subscriptions, opt-in, opt-outs, and look at their benefits, some of the B2B application access they have, partner dashboards. All of that has been included into this My Intel kind of an experience. We have a lot of integrations built over the years. Obviously, like identity management, single sign-on, profile management, they're all homegrown systems. We do have deep integrations with that. One thing to call out in the last 1 year is we adopted Adobe Search and Promote as a search engine. We used to use a very well-known like an enterprise search, but looking at where we are going with Adobe from an overall stack integration point of view, Adobe Search and Promote made a lot of sense. So we are completely there. In fact, our digital asset management system also uses Search and Promote. Untitled.com, the external search is Search and Promote. Then we use a taxonomy management tool. Every piece of content that is tagged in AEM comes from a structured, governed taxonomy that is imported into AEM, and it's through the tag manager that they tag all the content. And we, as I said, like My Intel is kind of becoming a hub for B2B and partner experiences. We do have several external applications within Intel. We bring that experience in context within AEM. A lot of those components have been built in AEM as components. And it's a good thing. It's all kind of, from a UX point of view, it's highly governed, but we also have challenges in scaling up. Everything has to be developed in AEM. And AEM is great from a content management, as you all know, but transactional do have a few challenges in terms of agility. Shawn is going to talk more about it later, what our plans are. Then we have a lot of off-prem capabilities. I will not go through all of that in the interest of time. We do use a third-party vendor for content translation. We have a shop experience, and a simple core is our, we call this as a core platform. We have a simple core. What it means is we have a lot of microsites, like short lifespan, like a marketing campaigns, where agencies own the creation of the content. We provide a simple WordPress kind of an environment in the cloud with some governance around it. We give them autonomy to create and publish it. Then once the campaign is over, we bring them down. Then in the last few months, we have expanded our Adobe footprint. We are beginning to use Adobe Audience Manager, Adobe Analytics, and Test and Target. So again, one of the reasons why this is exciting is we used to have a lot of these as different applications. Integration was really complex, driving the personalization and all that. So one of the promising things that we will be experimenting and moving forward is bringing the whatever Adobe is saying in terms of their marketing cloud, right? Experience cloud. we want to really see where it can do this. But we see huge benefits, but we will see how it goes for the next 1 year. So again, in the last 6 years, it's not been an easy journey. We went through a lot of learning. There were so many, I think some of you could attest it. I think managing the AEM environment with 500 authors worldwide, publishing content over each other, and MSM, memory management issues, all of that. We tried so many options, but it didn't work out. Finally, we had to make a decision. Okay, let us split our authoring environments into a couple of parts, and part 1 and part 2, right? Then we kind of segregated, okay, marketing, wherever the heavy volume, let us put that into one, and maybe support, and maybe B2B as a different, that way one will not compete for the resources, right? That way they can publish the content independently. So based upon that, we kind of created 2 parallel environments. We also moved our authoring environment to physical infrastructure because of the intense nature of the publishing. And then some of the things, like for example, a lot of issues were around MSM and copying the content locals and publishing it. A lot of times people were misusing some of the translation capabilities that we had provided. Instead of using AEM to activate the content or MSM to do it, they were using this external capability that we had provided for translation. That was taking a lot of time, but once we moved this to when we split it, then I think we were able to take control of that. Another big culprit is now we have like 20 plus publishers. There's 24/7 content getting published, and authors were really working really hard. I mean, author as a server was really working hard to publish the content of these 20 plus publishers. So we kind of offloaded that into kind of an intermediate chain publisher. That way, author has more capacity to run on. So that also helped quite a bit. Then the other major culprit was the dynamic delivery. We have a few components where everything is aggregated in a personalized way. Those components are there for a lot of pages. So cacheability is not much. So as a result, CRX used to get really hit hard, and it used to go down. So what we did was, what we have done is, we literally, every piece of content, page is literally, when it is published, we capture that as a metadata into a SQL DB. So there's a page, and all the metadata that is associated with that page is cached in a SQL DB. So based upon the situation or the component, sometimes it might go to CRX, or sometimes it might go to SQL. That way we know we can scale the SQL databases. That significantly reduced the load on the CRX. That was another benefit. Again, you might be wondering, why did we do all of this? Because 5.4 and 5.6.1, it was not really scaling to our needs. So we had to engineer out of this. But our idea is to relook at some of this. Maybe we go to 6.3 or beyond. Is it necessary to do all of this, or should we just go with what already? We don't know that yet. We will see in the next 1 year or so. From a roadmap point of view, as I said, this is all running on-prem. We are looking to, as you see, we also have a huge cloud footprint. In fact, our digital library that Mike is going to talk about, it is completely hosted on AWS. We are looking to explore geo-based publishers for the future, right? So something similar we also want to explore for the main the core infrastructure. So we have just started to as a proof of concept, because moving an on-prem system to the cloud with all these on-prem integrations is not easy. So we have just started that experimentation. Then Mike is going to talk about the digital library. It's one stop for all kinds of assets. We have had a really good success with 6.2 on that. Then Shawn is going to talk about what are we doing in terms of freeing up the other teams to do their own innovation instead of putting everything to AEM bucket, AEM Scrum teams. Then 6.3 is really looking exciting. Some of the features, Raghu is going to talk about it, and then we can talk later once we are done. Thank you again. With that, Mike.
I'm going to make sure we share.
Thanks, Shawn. Thank you, Arun. So as Arun alluded, Intel.com is very much a multi-headed beast. Lots and lots of content, lots and lots of organizations onboarding to on a regular basis. So in early 2016, we got the opportunity to kind of work on something, an AEM implementation outside the scope of Intel.com. So we took that opportunity to kind of kick the tires on 6.2. And a couple of other things that we really hadn't implemented yet, especially AWS and some other stuff, as you'll see. So we can talk about that for a little bit. So in 2016, it was time to retire our marketing asset library solution. This was the application that our external marketing agencies and internal marketing folks as well used to edit, download, change metadata for, and otherwise utilize marketing assets. And with this old solution that we had, there was a complete lack of consistency, really no reuse. It was not a very transparent platform. Governance was an issue. It was costly and slow, and perhaps most importantly, it was absolutely full of manual workarounds. There was really no workflow. Entropy had gone to the point where it was all this one admin doing everything, basically. Thoroughly overworked and shouldn't be like that. And the existing vendor was several years behind the market leaders. So we took a look at this, and we really determined that AEM was going to be the best way to handle this for a variety of reasons. We have expertise in-house, lots of it, after 6 years or so of being on AEM. We have a strong relationship with Adobe that was existing. We have an authoring environment that's familiar to our users already. There's also the out-of-the-box asset share component that we've been saying we're going to do something with eventually for years. And it comes replete with the shopping cart functionality, which is something that our original marketing asset library had and wanted to continue. And the ability to filter on tags and properties. And we have this taxonomy management system that is a really clean way to break out and identify and compartmentalize assets. So additionally, we have single sign-on available to us as well. So existing Intel users or anybody with an Intel account is able to seamlessly go from any other Intel site directly to our new marketing library site. So the previous solution that we had, I think our current solution at the time, was our Intel.com implementation. We were running on Windows. We were using IIS for our dispatcher module. We were running 6.0, but we were still using classic UI. So there were a lot of things that were kind of in our long-term roadmap that we could use kind of POC with this approach. So the biggest one, of course, was AWS. We've been looking to move to AWS for a long time, and it's been on our roadmap for a while. And as a result, we're now using Linux for the path to production for our dispatcher servers and our hub servers. And we were able to start with the very latest version of AEM, which was 6.2 at the time, in early 2016. And we're also able to POC Adobe Search and Promote, which is something else that we ended up doing, implementing wholesale on Intel.com. But this was kind of our first foray into using it. And the results of this, after a long and arduous journey, we launched the Intel Digital Library in late 2016. It's been very successful. We have 260 authors, 5,700 users, and over 3,000 assets. And we are using search and promote to search through the assets, to do navigation, to do our tag-based filtering. Thank you. And we're using the tag management to categorize and filter assets. And again, this is a control vocabulary that we use as a source for this information, synchronized from our Synaptica tool, which I believe Arun mentioned. And eventually, we're planning on onboarding as many different organizations within Intel as possible as a central place to store their marketing assets. We already now have sales. We initially started off with marketing, and now we have sales enablement as well, migrated to the IDL, and we expect to have many more to come. Let me see if this will work, if I can break out and do a quick demo. So here's our author instance. It's just a typical standard vanilla 6.2 instance, and not a whole lot of customization. Let's search for an asset. Try that again. Strategy being up.
Just a quick question, because it caught my eye.
Yeah.
The required metadata flag, is that something you guys added, or is that out of the box?
I think that is out of the box, but honestly, I'm not sure the answer to
No,
that.
no, out of box.
It is?
Well,
So really, the secret sauce here is our tagging categories. Our custom tags here are driven by the Synaptica platform, so it's a controlled vocabulary of taxonomy information. This one specifically is brand guidelines. We have a variety of others though. And this is what allows us to actually categorize and ultimately search for assets. On our actual production publish ideal site. Formats, and we can also break these down by category. There we go. Sorry. And so at kind of a high level, here's our initial architecture, which you can see with the kind of orangish red boxes. The gray ones are enhancements that we really want to make going forward, and we're planning on doing so. If you look over at Acquire, we get assets from creatives, whether it's a third-party creative or it's an in-house. They upload the assets directly. They can set metadata as necessary, or we can manage the metadata for them. We'll have administrators for Intel, potentially agency users as well, and our operations and production support team. They can manually edit metadata, and they can update the tags that are associated with the asset. At the other end, on the publish side, we have employees, marketing partners, or now sales partners, and third-party agencies that can do things like search, they can browse. They can download one of the options that we carried over from the existing asset share was the ability to have kind of a shopping cart functionality. You can add multiple assets to a single zippable shopping cart and download it once. And we also have a customized share functionality where somebody can basically share a link to an asset that's a temporary living link they can send to someone else, download it, and the link is no longer valid for security purposes. Some of the integrations that we have in place, I mentioned Synaptica, that's our metadata sync process, the secret sauce. Our core purpose search and promote functionality, and an SSO as well, our single sign-in, single sign-on login functionality. So in the future, what's potentially, we can enrich things perhaps from a metadata perspective with OCR, eventually maybe taking PDFs or assets like that and reading metadata directly into them. I just learned recently about Adobe Sensei about actually auto-tagging assets based upon some AI interpretation of what's actually in the asset, which is pretty cool. Also speech to text, possibly. I'm sure there are other ways to get custom metadata into our IDL as it grows. And speaking of growing, in the long term, we see this as being kind of an image server that really serves all Intel properties, or even properties past Intel, third-party sites, social media, as well as Intel.com. Right now, all the assets, the thousands of assets from Intel.com are sitting in our production server. Eventually, we could make it so we no longer have that load on our production server. That goes directly to a highly scalable, standalone asset server. And the just Intel.com is a sensible URL. Likewise, we can also publish that stuff out to Jive or social categories providers like Sprinkler.
So this is a standalone DAM. You also have a DAM that's in your
Yes.
regular authoring, and that's where your sites are referring to
Exactly.
images and stuff. Okay.
So as of now, this is our new solution is just for marketing and for sales enablement support, but we anticipate much more in the future. This is just a quick once-over of our AWS hosting framework. We have two publishers that have a load balancer between them and our two dispatchers. Eventually, in the future, we can start using a CDN, Akamai, likely, to speed up this delivery. Right now we don't have enough demand to make that necessary, but we anticipate eventually that we will as we add more and more properties and Intel organizations on board. Likewise, AWS has geo-based options as well that we'll probably look into leveraging at some point. And at the end of the day, the usage for this thing is, our vision is to have content from any number of different Intel organizations, verticals, channels. We have the initial IDL category. We have a set category for sales support, CRM software, which is kind of the same as our solutions library, our ITP, partners, our research and design center, and any number of other partners internally at Intel. So if we take your assets, drop them in our IDL, and tag them accordingly. So end users, that's transparent to end users. They'll pull assets from marketing group, they'll pull assets from sales, they'll pull assets from ITP once it gets onboarded, and we'll download their zip of custom assets as needed. And one of the things that we've done, I guess one of our first steps towards really leveraging this as a platform for assets, period, is an integration with Salesforce, where we have taken the Salesforce UX and set up a RESTful web service that provides a searchable entry point into our production IDL. So every user, every salesperson in the field who uses Salesforce has a variety of vertical markets they service. And for each of those vertical markets, they can search the IDL and they can retrieve the assets that are necessary for that specific user and that specific vertical market. And the way that we determine what a sales asset is again, the secret sauce, or their tagging framework, where anything tagged with Intel Solutions Library is a sales support enablement asset and is available to this API to search from. And that's just kind of the first step for our future model, which is this much more robust web service that serves up assets. It allows you to search through the IDL. It can serve you metadata in JSON or XML or any other formats. It will eventually be a cookieless domain, so it will be quick and painless to retrieve assets from there without any excess headers or cookies or any overhead. We'll have CDNs that will deliver speed in different geos across the globe, and we'll have collateral from any number of different verticals, agencies, products. They can be public, they can be private. If they're public, it's transparent to the end user. really. And with that, let me hand it over to Shawn. He's going to talk about our external app integrations.
So, to kind of set the stage for this discussion of external app integration, you've probably seen cases or had cases where you want to have some content that's going to talk to a backend database or do some sort of interactivity that's a little bit more app-like and less static content-like. So we have the same, and so we've been exploring ways that we can make this happen, essentially. And also, as we've scaled out our AEM instance to more and more groups, it's just, there's more people that are onboarding, and we just can't have the same Scrum teams kind of doing everything. We want to be able to spread that out and let the developers for these other groups also produce their apps and surface that somehow through AEM. So I'm going to walk through one way that we've been experimenting with to actually do this. So let me just shift over here for a minute. And what I'm going to show here to start off with, let me start. Get to the right tabs here. So I'm going to start by kind of walking through an external application. So this app I'm going to show you for just a minute is not AEM, and it's not really the point, but I want you to just get a sense of what the app is going to be doing as I talk through this. So the first thing I'm going to draw your attention to is the domain, because the cross-domain issues I'm going to talk about are really important. So you can see this app is hosted here at this WMS DAWM009 domain. And this is an Angular app. It's really just kind of a simple proof of concept app. It's a single page application. And so I've kind of screen scraped a little bit of HTML for this application. And as you look at these different tabs here across the top, when I click on these, the URL, the URL is staying the same. We're on the same URL. It's just using the Angular routing here to append something after the hash to navigate and go fetch a different view and load different HTML onto the screen. And so you can see, that's what's happening as I click on these views. The piece that's probably the most interesting here is this last tab, this external Angular app tab. And this is where the application is actually doing some CRUD-like operation. It's actually pulling data from a database, putting data into it, or manipulating it. And so the first thing you see as I land here, if I kind of point down here, is that we've integrated with a backend an internal service that knows who I am. So because I'm logged in, it's able to recognize me, pull back some information about me. And so we can see here in this text box, it has my alias. It knows who I am and who's going to be making this post. And then it's just a bulletin board application. This board over here is just pulling entries that other people, as they've been playing around, have been making. And so I can make some entry, say meetup, send it, and it shows up over here. And it's actually talking to the database. It's not just, it's not just manipulating the DOM here. So I'm going to open the developer tools here just a bit, and let's do something different again. So make another post here, and you can see, when I did this, there's some AJAX requests that were fired off that posted data to a backend system. You can come in and pull one of these things up and click on edit, and I can make changes, hit update. It's a full-fledged application, right? So it's an Angular application that's talking to a backend database. So now I'm going to shift over to another tab here and show essentially the same thing, but this time I've switched domains. So now you can see I'm at 4502. I'm in an AEM instance. This is my local AEM instance here. Right.
Oh no.
Push the button.
Is it on too long?
Might overheat.
Looks like we're on standby. Let me
Is it
see.
on standby?
Right.
All right, we'll give the system a few seconds to warm up. This is a live demo, right?
Of course. Something has to go wrong. It's a demo.
That's amazing live demo.
Just when you're getting the good stuff.
I know. like it's recognizing laptops and maybe just yeah, it said to give it a minute to warm up. We're getting there.
Coming up,
Oh, there.
So while we were out, the minds behind the scenes were running around and organizing things here. I think we're back in business. So I switched to this other tab, and I'm hitting my 4502, my local instance of AEM, on a different domain, as you can see. That's important. But you see down here kind of the same content. Now, it's not the only thing on the page. There's some other stuff here. I've got some extra text that's showing up here. If I scroll down here, there's some stuff at the bottom that wasn't in the other application. But it's essentially the same thing. As I click on the links, I still got the same Angular routing to navigate and pull in different views. And if I go to the external app, I see the postings that I made just a few minutes ago. And I can make another post here, and it'll go back and it'll update that backend database. So it's fully functioning here. And this is I'm simulating or showing as if we're on a publisher, a published page experience here. But the same capability that we get in our external app. So I'm going to shift over now to the same page, but this time just in the authoring view to just show that it's really nothing different than what you're already probably used to. It's a component down here just like anything else. And I can click on some of these other components and I can drag these things around, rearrange the content before or after this external app component. It's an option over here in the sidekick that someone can drag on. I could have pulled this up in the touch UI, but I'm just showing the classic at this point. So I'm going to right click and edit this just to show some of the information that's needed to wire this up for this particular component. So really there's 4 pieces of information that are important here. The first piece is really just the application's base path. And so by this, it really is just where does this external application live? I want to know the domain and any directory path information to get to the kind of the root of the application here. So, and the reason this is important is because AEM needs to know where to go to get this application and pull it in. So we start with the base path and then add other things. And the 2 critical pieces here are the JavaScript and the CSS. So the app script is, for this to work, Angular is running the application here. It's doing all the work when I click on those tabs. It's doing the routing, going off and fetching the views. So I need to get the JavaScript that is running the show, the controller JavaScript. And so this is the link to pull in the application's JavaScript file. And now maybe this isn't all the script that the app uses, but at least we would expect this script to load anything else it might need. So this is the entry point that needs to be able to run everything that the app might need.
Is that being pulled from the base path?
From the base path, yep, exactly. So just needs to be the path relative to the base path that we've configured. And then the next piece here, the third piece, is the CSS for the application. I definitely want things to look the same when I'm on the application's URL and when I go to AEM, I want it to still look the same. I don't want to have a different experience or have people say, oh, the font's a little off or the styling's a little messed up. So I'm pulling in the CSS, and once again, this needs to really be enough CSS to load the app, or maybe the script might load some more. But it just needs to essentially be that base CSS for the application. And then lastly, for Angular, it works by essentially taking a container, maybe something like a div that has an ID and it says, I'm going to render the application inside of this container. So we're just specifying what's the ID, what's the container where we're going to render this application. So with these 4 pieces of information, that's really all that we are pulling in from the application. Now, to make it work, I highlighted domain at the beginning, and the cross-domain issues are really something you have to think about and worry about here, something we had to deal with. So normally a browser won't allow this kind of communication. It won't allow you to go off and pull content from some other app and load it. So let me open the developer tools again here. And let's make another post. So when I go look at this post I just made and I examine the post a little bit in a little bit more detail here, the key thing here are these response headers. So the application is essentially sending these, these cross-origin security headers that opt the app in. Essentially, the application is saying, I allow myself to be hosted on this domain. If some other domain tries to host me, nope, the browser's not going to allow it. But the application has to at least opt in. So this is one of the prerequisites to hosting it through a component in the way I'm showing is the application itself has to set these headers so that they'll be allowed inside of AEM. So another thing that was crucial to make this work inside of AEM has to do with the way Angular does routing and goes and fetches these different views. So normally, when the Angular app's running over here, it's listing or fetching new content through these routes. It's going to make AJAX requests, and normally those AJAX requests they'll essentially be relative to this domain. So when I first was building this, the first problem I ran into is that once the app loaded, as soon as it went off to try to make one of these requests, it would try to pull the content from the AEM domain instead. It's trying to pull it relative to where it's being loaded, and of course that didn't work. So I had to go into the component and essentially not take over, but look at the XML HTTP object and essentially intercept the AJAX requests and find the ones that relate to the app and reroute them to an absolute path, and let the ones that don't relate to the app, we have AJAX requests in the header for all kinds of things, so we need to let those continue to function normally and go to AEM like they normally would. So that was another piece to think about and set up, is just how to make it so this application will still route the AJAX request back to the external app instead. So one other, you might be thinking, why would you do this? I mean, we've built Angular applications and Angular components inside of AEM. Maybe you've done the same thing as well. It's certainly possible. You can build this kind of thing inside AEM itself, and you don't have to be deploying it from an external app. But as I mentioned at the outset, one of the reasons we did this is we wanted to enable external teams to develop on their own platforms. So if I shift over, like here I have I have an HTML file, and this is one of the HTML views for that external Angular app. And you can see, sorry, once this goes away. So you can see kind of right up here that I'm pulling it from the original domain, the external apps domain. So this is the file that I've loaded. And I can come over here and change something, save this file. And when I go to my external app here, and I'm going to just reload the page, we see that change has, it's taken effect. So, if I'm simulating an application team off developing, I've made a change, just deployed the change. The app team has just deployed a change to production and updated their app. So, since we're pulling this in the way we are inside of AEM, I can also then come to here and just reload my page in AEM, and the same change shows up, and I didn't have to go or import anything. There was no code that had to move. It just gets sucked right in. So that's kind of just to illustrate one of the reasons, one of the points of doing this. So let me just shift back to the slides here and talk about some of the benefits and maybe some of the risks and cons as well. So one reason to do this is that it lets these external teams kind of work on their own release cycles. So they can develop and they can deploy whenever they want. They don't have to be constrained or follow the same release schedule that the AEM platform follows. They can work independently and go when they want to. Another thing here is that these external apps, like I've been showing, they're an Angular app. It's typically developers that want to work on a mean stack, and they want to use tools like Node and Grunt and Bower, and they want to use the tools that they're familiar with and that they're most productive with, which probably isn't CRXDE and probably isn't the same tools that we would use inside of AEM. So by doing this, kind of lets them we still get the same benefit of surfacing their app through AEM, but they still get to work on the tools where they're most productive and most familiar, and they can deploy and package their application as they see fit. And AEM as well can deploy and package as AEM sees fit. And then the last piece here is that, you know, a lot of times these applications, they may be kind of mini apps. You know, it's maybe not a full-fledged page that somebody's going to scroll up to, but maybe just a small section of content that we want to show up somewhere on a page. And so it lets authors pull that kind of content into their page just like they would any other content. You know, they can author this alongside of anything else. They can drag and drop components, position things around that application or that app snippet, and still have kind of the full normal authoring experience that they're used to, without having to be, you know, an application developer or know anything about the app necessarily. So the areas of concern, I mentioned the cross-domain security. You have to set that up and you have to opt in. Also, I talked about how when the authors are configuring the app, they configure the reference to the JavaScript and the CSS so that the app's going to look the same in AEM as it looks when you're hitting the external URL. It's kind of a two-way street. You know, if you're going to host the app inside of AEM, the app probably wants to import the AEM styles and perhaps the AEM JavaScript so that you don't have the app suddenly find out, oh, I have a conflict, you know, I'm loading jQuery and the app's also, you know, AEM's loading jQuery and now we're stepping on each other's toes, you know. So that's the kind of thing, you know, to do this and to make it work, we really have tried to put I guess, enable a component that comes with some guidelines. You know, we would ask the development teams to conform to a spec, you know, so as long as they follow certain requirements and do things in a certain way, they import the AEM CSS and JavaScript, we import the app CSS and JavaScript, we can play nicely. But, you know, it does still bring up the risk. You know, there's still that possibility that somebody could change their app and, you know, they could break something. Or someone cascades a style that's a little too broad, it cascades where they didn't intend it to, and, you know, you could still have those kinds of conflicts. So that's one of the concerns or cons to be aware of here. So, but that's kind of it, what I wanted to show for the external application. So we'll turn it over to Raghu.
Thank you, Shawn, for the cool demo. So here I am to walk you through our next big initiative. So transition to Touch UI. So in early 2016, when we upgraded our system from 5.6 to 6.1, we have upgraded with the classic code base. So once we ensure that our platform is stable enough with the 6.1, we shifted our focus to Touch optimized UI, transitioning to the Touch optimized UI. Before even working on Touch UI, we want to understand whether our platform is compatible enough because we had a series of upgrades on our environment. So that's where we have taken advantage of running the Touch UI with the classic definition. And once we accomplish that, we have considered the product catalog as our pilot program to work on the Touch UI. The reason why we considered this product catalog is primarily of three reasons. Firstly, this project demands a brand new templates and a brand new components. And most of that project is data driven and not content driven, which means we have a very less authoring on the project. And moreover, we have a very limited set of authors working on our product catalog content. So this project did help us in building the overarching components like page properties, custom widgets, whatever we need going forward. And along with that, we also have extracted top 10 templates and the associated components that we want to transform it into Touch UI. So currently that particular development is in progress, and our target is to deliver them by Q2. During the development, we did face a few challenges because of the limitation on the support and as well as the expertise within our team. So here are the list of the standard issues that we faced with the tool. The first one is basically when we have the rich text editor in the multi-field, some of the plugins were not available, like the special characters. So we are working with Adobe on the hotfix package. The second one is regarding the paragraph reference widget. So we have a component where we use the paragraph reference widget. And in the Touch UI, there is no substitute for that widget. So we left as it is that component. So we are running that particular component with the classic definition. And the last one is respected to the multi-field. Because we have overridden our multi-field. Because the out-of-the-box multi-field basically stores in an array format, but we have overridden the multi-field to store in a node specific, so that it will help us in translating our content without any issues. So the issue with nested multi-field was there was a component where we had a dialog with the multi-tabs, and when we had a nested multi-field on the tab 1, all the subsequent tab content was missing. Like we couldn't do that, and one of our developers has to do a lot of recoding in order to enable. So this is a screenshot of the component where we had the nested multi-field. So I couldn't fit all the tabs content into this slide, but if you see in the touch UI, we have additional tabs when compared to the classic UI. This is basically we have to rearrange a lot of properties so that it will render properly with the whatever the limitation that we are seeing with the nested multi-field. And next, this slide is basically to share what exciting features that we are planning to explore with the 6.3. In Intel, as mentioned earlier in the session, we support 29 locales, and that have 500K active pages, which means all our content is distributed. Now, with the help of the content fragments feature within the 6.3, we feel like we can centralize our content wherever possible. And also, the content fragment will help us build the content independent of the page and the channel specific. So we have a content to the channel specific. So we feel like with this feature will definitely help us overcoming such kind of issues. So when we centralize our content, it is easy to review and do the management of the content. And it will also help in our translations process. That's what we believe, because it's a centralized, so we feel like the translation process will be much more simpler than what we do today. And so in Intel, we also use paragraph references a lot. So the below the snap is basically built with the paragraph reference. So as